I don't know why. Anyway, okay, let's just begin then in that case. Good afternoon, colleagues, and welcome to this Scottish Landing Festival webinar. Thanks very much for giving up your time to come along today. Just a few wee protocols. I'm sure we're all old hands at webinars now, but if I can just ask you, please make sure you switch off your microphone. That'll avoid us hearing any background noise. Just to remind you that the event, this webinar is being recorded, so as long as you're aware of that. Your camera you can have on or off as suits you. Sometimes off is a bit better for your own bandwidth, but that's entirely up to you. If you have any questions, please use the chat function and we'll try and pick those up. We'll have time for question and answer session at the end. So let's just get straight into this. I'm assuming you can all see the presentation. Oddly enough, I can't, but there you go. It's just one of the wonders of technology. First of all, just to remind you, COP26 is on its way. World leaders coming to discuss learning for sustainability, environmental issues, and so on. And the purpose of this webinar today is to think about how we can approach COP26, environmental issues, learning for sustainability through the context of RME and social studies. And the idea is to try to help us to think about how we address that with learners at all stages. And my colleague Lynn Robertson and I will be drawing largely upon the fantastic work being done in Falkirk Council by Yvonne Mclean and Jane Jackson there. So next slide, please, Yvonne, which I still won't be able to see. Okay, so thank you for that. Oh, the slide has now appeared. Well, that's good. Three pictures here just to give you a kind of introduction to how this links to RME as a curricular area. The first picture on the top right there is a very well-known picture. It's called the pale blue dot. And what it is a photograph of Earth taken on February 14th, 1990 by NASA's Voyager 1. It was 3.7 billion miles away from the sun just before it began its exit from our solar system. So that little pale blue dot you see there is planet Earth. That's our home. That's where you live. That's where I live. That's where all life on Earth lives. It could ask you, could we get you to think about one of the three benchmark organisers for RME, and that's beliefs. What beliefs does that question raise for you and for your learners? It could make you feel more significant, more insignificant. It could make you ask questions about your common humanity. It could lead to questions about the origins of life, stewardship, environmental responsibility, and so on. But the beliefs that you hold around life on Earth and our planet is going to have a great impact on what we do. So great opportunity to discuss with learners. The second image below that, we know we have a massive problem with plastic on planet Earth, and you know, we can have places which are beautiful areas of outstanding beauty, areas of special scientific interest, and yet the existence of humankind is never far to be seen. So how does this relate to values? How can we help learners to explore their values through exploring the ways in which perhaps their local environment is cheated by humanity, and how do those values direct our behaviours? The third picture there, in some countries, Buddhist monks have been known to ordain trees as monks, and the idea behind this practice is that once you're ordained as a monk, you're going to be protected from harm. So it's a way of taking Buddhist practice and you know, using it in a way that is something that will support environmental protection. So, you know, you think of those festivals that you probably commonly do in RME, Harvest, Christmas, Sukkoth, the Hajj. In what ways could those be explored from an environmental responsibility point of view? So it's probably fair to say that sometimes we just think about RME as learning only about the history and practices of world religions. how can we use beliefs and values and practices and traditions in relation to environmental issues to help our learners think about their relationship with nature. So I'm going to pass over to Lynn, who's going to take you through social studies. Yvonne, if you move on, thank you.
Hi there. So social studies has 3 organisers in our learning, in our experiences and outcomes, sorry. And there are 4 images there, and there's 4 images for a reason, because the organisers, although they cover people, past events and society, which we think of as history, people, place and environment, which we think of as geography, there's also people in society, economy and business, and that really splits itself between the business studies element and the modern studies element. So there are 4 elements to social studies. And learning for sustainability really is a brilliant context across all of the organisers. The big image on the right-hand side of the protest sits beautifully within modern studies in terms of creating responsible citizens within our curriculum area, and enabling young people to find their views on topics and then become activists in terms of what they would like to do about what they find out. The social studies organiser that seems to fit best with learning for sustainability is always geography, the people, place and environment. And geography certainly does look specifically within the E's and O's at climate change, at personal responsibility, at actions that can be taken to improve our world that we live in, to reduce litter, to reduce pollution. But the business studies element and the history element are also really important, because there are loads of opportunities within history to look at climate responsibility in the past, because we look at the Industrial Revolution, the Agricultural Revolution, and also even more ancient civilizations. So there's an opportunity to look at when did things begin to change in terms of energy use, what kind of energy use was there in the past, how did ancient civilizations live in a climate-friendly way, or did they? But also the business studies element today, looking at businesses and how they are changing their business plan in order to become more environmentally friendly, because they realise that consumers are looking for a more responsible attitude to our planet and to business, and that consumers are moving away from organisations which are seen not to be as effective in that area. So there's lots of opportunities within social studies to use learning for sustainability as a context that you can then work in an interdisciplinary way across the kind of subjects if you're in secondary, but also using social studies within the primary setting for lots of different topics within learning for sustainability. And I'm handing over now to Yvonne.
Okay, I'm just going to leap in quickly to introduce you to our 2 colleagues from Falkirk, Yvonne Mclean and Jane Jackson. Yvonne and Jane will take you through their work on learning for sustainability. As Yvonne and Jane are going through their presentation, feel free to post your questions in the chat, and we'll try and pick up on those at appropriate points. There will be a question and answer session at the end. We will hopefully be able to elaborate on a few things and clarify anything for you that you'd like clarified. So pass over now to Yvonne and Jane.
Good morning, folks. I'm Jane Jackson, and just a quick hello from Yvonne.
Hello.
And as it says on the slide, we are curriculum support officers based within the service and school improvement team within Falkirk Children's Services. And this afternoon, we just want to share with you some of our LFS journey, and we want to demonstrate how we hope that COP26 will just be an integral part of our LFS progress in our schools this session. So COP26 has given us an opportunity to really shine the light on climate change. But in Falkirk, we really hope that one of the legacies of COP26 will be really embedded curricular change and not just be a flurry of activity when our world leaders in Glasgow. We're hoping that it's a legacy that will result in learning for a better world. That's one of the catchphrases of LFS, and it's part of our Falkirk branding. But we also hope to demonstrate how the social studies and RME experiences and outcomes can be delivered in a really interdisciplinary way, using the wide range of resources that are available connected to COP26.
Thanks, Jane. And it's my job just to tell you a wee bit more about how we've structured that cross-cutting theme of learning for sustainability that Jo and Lynn both referred to. And to do that, I've gone right back to the refreshed curriculum narrative, which Gail Gorman referred to this morning, because we see these snippets that we've pinched from the refreshed curriculum narrative graphics as central to the principles that underline LFS and Curriculum for Excellence. But as you scan over them, you'll also see how citizenship, values, environment and rights are integral not only to the curriculum, but also relate to the social studies and RME, are elements which Lynn and Jo were both just speaking about. So they're integral to both the curriculum areas, but also to the cross-cutting theme of learning for sustainability. So what we tried to do in Falkirk was to go back to the Learning for Sustainability word cloud, which you'll all be very familiar with, and to see if we could find a way to streamline the complexity of it. So we literally categorised every single word in it to create a new representation of the word cloud, which you'll see. You'll obviously not be able to see the detail of it in this particular slide, but we've created what we call our Learning for Sustainability framework, our Falkirk Learning for Sustainability framework. And this is basically what it is. So you can see the components there. It consists of a poster which captures the skills, the content and the pedagogies defined by the word cloud. But we realised that it needed to be accompanied by concrete interdisciplinary plans for each of the 5 bundles of Learning for Sustainability content, which I'm about to share with you. We realised that we needed to change the way that we worked. We needed to look at our professional learning menu. We needed to develop our partnerships to complete the jigsaw pieces of our whole LFS framework and to do some of that streamlining, which I mentioned. So it's very much a work in progress still. But we'll share a wee bit more about how it's developing and get a bit closer also to the social studies and RME elements of it. So what you can see on the screen at the moment is a close-up of the bundles section of our poster. And this is where we've categorised the content. So once we've taken out the pedagogy, the skills and the high-level words from the word cloud, we were left with the actual Learning for Sustainability content or learning. So as I said, we categorised that. We sort of played around with all of the words and we realised that we could group them into what we call kind of high-level curriculum purposes. And we felt that those were very much in line with the guidance we got from the Chief Executive about the way we should be bundling. Do you remember that word, bundling? The experiences and outcomes to plan and streamline learning for pupils and also for practitioners designing their curriculum. So the 5 purposes that you could see, we've given you a slightly bigger text close-up of here in this slide. So you can see the first one is exploring sustainable practices. Second one's taking part in global citizenship, and that includes international education projects. Then bundle number 3 is connecting with culture and heritage, and we're thinking from local to global with that wide curriculum purpose. Fourth one is about exploring values and attitudes, and I'll say a wee bit more about that later because we've got some examples of what that actually looked like. And the 5th broad purpose was exercising activism. And you can see from the slides here that in our framework bundles, we captured the words from the word cloud, which we categorised together. And what we've done is to create a set of bundle plans, which are very broad. You might think of them really as starter plans, which our practitioners can use at early right through to 4th level to help them structure a progressive curriculum. So as an example, bundle 4 is what we call an interdisciplinary project that's led by RME. You can see, if you can just, you'll probably not be able to make out the text of the slides there, but you can see we have our RME experiences and outcomes combined with health and wellbeing, and we couldn't quite manage to squeeze in the social studies experiences and outcomes, which are part of that bundle within the picture of this slide. So this is a bundle which is capturing, I suppose, a lot of learning that isn't always captured or noted in a school's curriculum, that idea of overtly teaching values and attitudes. So we were quite excited about capturing this bundle and having it led by RME. And in the slide here, we thought it would be of interest to you to see how a practitioner in one of our schools, so Carol Jack, was working. She's moved on to a different post now, but she worked with colleagues in Kinnaird Primary School in Falkirk to adapt that particular bundle, and she worked with colleagues to create a version of that bundle from early to second level in her establishment. And you can see that she and colleagues decided to add in that social studies element of people, past event and societies to this particular bundle, which they felt was correct for their particular context. And I thought you might be interested in homing in on the particular skills that Carol and her colleagues identified both in RME. So you can see there's very much a focus on the values such as wisdom, justice, compassion. Then in the next bullet point, the set of skills, developing beliefs, attitudes, and so on. So they identified clear skills within their planning for that particular bundle, both for RME and for social studies. And in addition, if you're able to scan your eyes over those statements there, you'll see that they do form really powerful interdisciplinary learning because of the overlap between those two subject areas and the way that they've homed in on the skills defined by the experiences and outcomes, the ones that overlap and link, making hopefully this bundle, this interdisciplinary bundle, even more powerful because it's done in an interdisciplinary way than it could ever be if it was done in a disciplinary way. Another element which we thought you might be interested to hear about in relation to RME in particular is the development in Falkirk of our RME progression pathways. We've been working with colleagues in schools for quite a few years now to try to capture progression pathways for every subject area in Falkirk. We're not quite there. We've had a wee delay recently, as I'm sure you'll understand. But just before the pandemic hit, we had the final draft of our progression pathways for RME. So what our practitioners are beginning to be able to do is to use these pathways in conjunction with the bundle plans. And the idea is that our progression pathways pick up on the differentiation, the progression within each level, so not only across each levels, but within each level, to support practitioners' planning of the detail of, first of all, what they want to do, so that they can then focus in on differentiating it, getting the pace, the challenge correct for the learners that they are working with. So we thought it would be useful just to pop that slide up, just to give you an idea of how the policy documents in our council are trying to interlink to genuinely get that streamlining going right across the curriculum. And again, in this particular example, this is another one of Carol's plans, showing you just in a wee bit more detail about how Carol has and colleagues in her school linked together. A different example, this time we're on to the exercising activism, so bundle 5. So you can see that, and you can't see the whole of the plan, but what I loved about this particular plan and the way that these practitioners had integrated their RME and their social studies was that they hadn't only used the starter plan from a teacher point of view, they'd worked out how they could use outdoor learning, how they could take their learners out into the community to identify aspects of the way their community was that they wanted to do something about. So genuinely demonstrating pupil voice, responsiveness to pupil interest, responsiveness to their specific community as well. So that's one of the things that I particularly loved about the way that the practitioners took this plan and made it their own, but also made sure that the children's voices and the children's interests shaped the way that looked. So in the next slide, I can show you a wee media snippet of the actual impact that these people had and how successful their exercising of activism actually was. So you can see it's maybe not a very salubrious campaign topic, so they were really bothered about dog fouling in their local area, but their campaign reached our local paper and beyond. So I thought it might be nice for me to hand over to Jane on that positive note, and I hope the information that I've passed on to you, both about our framework, about the detail of social studies and RME, and about how that looked in schools, I hope that has been of interest. So I'll hand over to you now, Jane. Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne. I'm not sure if the baton of dog poo's particularly appreciated, but I'll accept the baton anyway. So you've seen our framework and you've seen little snippets of some of our plans, and you've seen how our schools are starting to use them. But we're now getting a lot more interest from schools in learning for sustainability because of COP26. So as well as signposting our schools to resources, and there's loads of resources out there, we're trying to make sure that any learning related to COP26 is done within that wider LFS context and using that framework that Yvonne's just described to you, because we really want that curricular change as part of our legacy in Falkirk. And we also want to impact pedagogy, ensuring that where possible, learners taken outdoors, that pupils are given opportunities to direct their own learning, and that active and engaging teaching is actually part of that culture and ethos change that we're really hoping for. But we know that resources are important and they are the key. So if we can engage our teachers with exciting learning resources that will engage their learners, then that's going to be half the battle. So we will be signposting resources and helping schools to link those to the bundles that Yvonne has described within our framework. There's loads of resources out there, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples, and please don't take these as endorsements of these particular resources, because I just wanted to be able to show you a couple of examples of resources that are out there and to show how we'll be able to link those into our learning bundles, and again how they can contribute specifically to social studies and to RME. So one example of a resource that's out there from Daydream Believers is the Human Habitat Challenge, and you'll get access to that on their website. And this resource challenges pupils to imagine or create a space where communities, nature and business can all flourish together, and there's lesson ideas and resources there to help. So although it's aimed at 14 to 16-year-olds, this idea could be used with much younger learners. I've used a similar idea in an outdoor setting where I just asked primary pupils to use the natural resources that they can see around about them to create a little model of a sustainable community. And that's challenging them to think about, you know, what are the essential elements for survival and what features would you need to, or would you want to create in your sustainable community? I've done this quite a few times with primary schools, and interestingly, not many of them actually include schools in their dream communities. I'm not quite sure why that is. So that resource from Daydream Believers links really well into either Bundle 1 or Bundle 4 within our framework. It would just depend on how an individual teacher or how the learners decided that they wanted to use it. So you can see that although we're signposting resources, we would very much in Falkirk be directing them to think about it in that wider context. So if we look then how that resource in particular would relate to social studies, we can see that if you move on to the next slide, Yvonne, you can see that within the people, place and environment organiser, and I've used the level 4 experience and outcomes because that resource was particularly aimed at kind of upper sort of in that level. There's experiences and outcomes that would be particularly relevant, and I've also highlighted the benchmarks that would relate into that particular resource and into those particular bundles. And likewise on the next slide, using the same resource, I've highlighted how that could be used with RME as the leading subject. So the resource itself could be used in a wide range of ways, and as I said, it links well into 2 of our bundles depending on how the teacher or the young people who are taking part in that learning wanted to take it. So just to show how another resource would link in, we work very closely with different partners, and another example there, and again I'm not endorsing particular partners or resources. So ScotDec, we work very closely with, and they produce easy to use resources which are directly linked into the Sustainable Development Goals, and those resources would link into any of our 5 bundles, and they could be mapped to social studies, to RME, and loads of other areas of the curriculum. So as I've said, there are so many resources out there, and I've only used those 2 as an example to show where they would fit into our bundles and how they could link into RME or social studies. But when we're directing schools to these and the other resources that are out there, and Jo and Lynn will talk to you a wee bit more about those towards the end, we're hoping that our schools won't use those as standalone pieces of work, but they'll use them as an integral part of a planned LFS curriculum across the school. So I'm just going to hand back to Yvonne just to round off our part of the session.
Thanks, Jane. Well, hopefully this overview of our framework, our bundles, our plans, and how we link these with resources from partners has been useful. Like LFS, our framework is a complex, interconnected process, which is still evolving, as I said. So whilst we're keen to signpost our schools and colleagues to the wonderful array of COP26 opportunities, we're also keen to keep an eye on its curriculum legacy. So we want these opportunities to contribute to the ongoing development and cohesion of our framework, and we're doing our best to link our people, our processes, and our professional learning accordingly. So I think that concludes our part, Jo and Lynn, so I'll hand back over to yourself to finish off, if that's okay.
Thanks very much. That's always really interesting to hear what you're doing in Falkirk. And really, I wanted to give you a brief update as to what's happening in Education Scotland for the countdown to COP. There are lots of resources on our website which are continuing to grow, classroom resources that you can use with young people. And there are some images shown there of the various possibilities of things that you can have a look at. We have a partnership approach. So there are around 50 partners working with Education Scotland on the countdown to COP. There are specific primary resources. There's Doug's Discovery Den. I just love Doug. If you're on Twitter, he travels around the country, and he's really cute. And he has some early years materials that you can find out about. There's also Countdown to COP BGE that is split into a variety of topics such as nature, energy transition, clean transport, finance. So there's lots of things on our website to have a look at related to COP. We've not, Jo and I had kind of made the decision not to give particular resources that we would particularly recommend, because there are just so many of them, and it's better to have a look yourself and see what you might be interested in. But certainly the development education centres that Falkirk, that Yvonne and Jane both mentioned there, have great resources that you can have a look at, and they are funded in no small part by Scottish Government, so those resources are free to teachers to use. Jo, are you wanting to add anything there?
Yeah, I'll just come in at that point there, Lynn. Thanks for that. Yeah, I put a couple of things into the chat, which, in addition to obviously all those preparing for COP26, Education Scotland resources. Obviously, various communities across Scotland are also considering their approach to COP26, and two that I've put into the chat that I think are probably particularly pertinent to the RME context is the, first of all, Interfaith Scotland's Scottish Interfaith Week this year, which basically is taking a COP26, environmentally friendly, eco-friendly type approach. They've actually got a schools competition underway at the moment, and it's quite a lovely idea, actually, one I find very interesting, and that is that they're asking learners to consider, religious festivals, religious practices, and consider how they actually might make those more eco-friendly. So it's a great bit of learning there, because obviously learners have to do a fair wee bit of research around those religious festivals and practices, and then they've really got to apply their understanding, I suppose, of the key elements of environmental issues in relation to how they may make those festivals environmentally friendly. One lovely wee example is, for example, if you think of the number of religious festivals that involve candles, you might actually explore the composition of the candle. So, is it an oil-based, paraffin-based candle? Is it, even if it's, I suppose, if it's beeswax, you can see there's some environmental issues around that as well. But the point is, it's for learners to think about those aspects of those festivals and say, well, how could they be more environmentally friendly? And it might even be something as simple as, for example, getting to a religious building. How do you do it? Is it a jump in your car for a 2-mile journey, or is it a more environmentally friendly way? So Interfaith Scotland's approach this year is very much around COP26. I've also put a link to the Scottish Catholic Education Service. There was a wee bit in the chat earlier on about the outcomes and experiences for religious education in Roman Catholic schools. RELC is the shorthand we use for that. And again, trying to highlight how different communities will be approaching this now. By no means is that extensive. There are obviously a range of religious and belief communities in Scotland. So, bearing in mind, it's always been very difficult to find the correct terminology for non-religious groups, but groups such as Humanist Society Scotland will also, I would imagine, be very focused on COP26 and environmental issues. So how do those groups, how do those belief groups, how do those perspectives, how are they approaching? And it's not just COP26, it's just that whole notion of sustainability, learning for sustainability, which will continue beyond COP26. There was an interesting comment in the chat earlier on about how much learners are aware of COP26 and what the impact of that on them. It'd be interested to hear if there are any practitioner views around that one. But certainly in terms of environmental issues, there's great scope there, we think, obviously, across those two subject areas to think about using those subject areas as vehicles to think about environmental responsibility. And it's about your personal, your individual, your local, your community, all of those responsibilities, and how we kind of find ourselves on planet Earth. So there's an awful lot of things out there coming up on the back of this. So keep your eye out for it. Hopefully some of the links there you'll find quite useful. So we did want to give a good opportunity during this particular webinar for people to come back at us and ask us some questions, ask for some clarification, maybe seek a little bit more, or even, importantly, make some observations, share some practitioner approaches, because I'm quite sure We have about 112 people on the call today, which is great. I'm absolutely convinced there are fantastic things going on out there, both in relation to RME and social studies, but also linking those to environmental issues and the whole topic of COP26. So I'm just going to open it up now to ask you if you want to feel free to unmute, although as I say, there are 109, I've just noticed. If you feel free to unmute and come in, make an observation and ask us a question, or if you feel you don't want to do that with 100 plus people, feel free to put your questions into the chat. I'm hoping that we've addressed some of the questions that have come up in the chat previously. So over to you now.
Joe, I'll maybe stop presenting now so that we can see each other's faces. That'd be good.
Yeah. If no one's coming in at the moment, Mary, I don't want to put you on the spot, so I'm just about to, so apologies for that. But Mary Thompson is one of our Learning for Sustainability STEM, in fact, officers at Education Scotland. Mary and I have presented quite a few times around RME and STEM. Mary, you've just put in the chat there about another COP26 session taking place tomorrow. Feel free to have a free plug for that session now if you want to say a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, Mark's on the call too, and we're doing this together. It's a kind of getting ready for COP26 at 3:45 until 4:30 tomorrow afternoon. And really it will be a chance just to share some of the resources that Lynn put on the screen there. And obviously you've had the Daydream Believers kind of mentioned already. So we're going to take you through the supports and offers on place through Doug's Discovery Den, through the primary thing link and the range of themes there that explore finance, energy transition, adaptation, resilience, and so on, and to sort of take you through some of the opportunities through the BGE resources as well, following the same themes. So we would love to see you there. We'd love if you join us and we can talk together a little bit more about how you are getting your learners ready for COP26 and how you're using this as a springboard to more exciting things to come, and exploring that and embodying learning for sustainability in its fullest sense for your learners. So we'd love to see you there. And a big shout out to Mark, who has plugged the LFS Teams. It's been great because we've been getting emails pinging in about people joining that. So we'd love to see you there to continue the conversation and to keep the offers coming through. So thanks very much for that time, Joe, and great to see some of the comments coming through here too. So thanks, Joe.
Thanks for that, Mary. And also for people's information, a lot of the webinars that we have done in the past are actually up on Education Scotland's site. So, for example, that one that Mary and I did specifically around RME and learning for sustainability or environmental issues is up there. Audrey Fadley, I see you've got your hand up. So, Audrey, please come in.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the presentation. It's one I have had the pleasure of seeing because of the work that Yvonne and Jane have done, and also the work, how it links with the work that Mary and Mark are doing. And it's, I think for practitioners, it's really great to see that coherent, progressive pathway, that planning document. I think as a practitioner, you can feel overwhelmed sometimes by the curriculum, and I think it's really good that it's kind of decluttered for you, it's simplified for you as part of that. And I think as a member of staff, thinking about my curricular areas, my IDL, how do I make sure I'm getting learning for sustainability, especially with enhancing importance with our new GTC standards. How do I make sure I'm making it personalised to our context, our setting? I really felt that the framework really helps put all the planning together in a really manageable way. And I think having things like the Sustainable Development Goals as part of that, I know that they've Yvonne and Jane have looked at kind of UNCRC and how that all interlinks. So instead of things feeling like bolt-ons, add-ons, something else I need to do, this framework and the ideal opportunities just makes it a really, I think, straightforward way that staff are able to personalise it to their context, but in a way that's meaningful and ultimately provides a richer learning experience. And so you get all your, it's not a box ticking thing, you get all your good coherent planning right from the very beginning. And I think that is a really innovative and much appreciated approach. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Audrey. You got any other questions, any other observations? Just having a look at the chat here. While you're having a think about that, I'm quite happy to do another plug because I see Mark's talking about the Teams groups. We have a range of Teams groups which really took off at the start of the first lockdown. I have to admit I had never done a Teams meeting, I don't think, before the start of the first lockdown, and I wouldn't say I'm quite the expert now, but we have a Teams group in the RME world. We have one for secondary RME practitioners, we have one for primary RME practitioners, which in fact meets today at 4 o'clock. We have a psychology, a sociology, philosophy, and a Roman Catholic RE practitioners one. Now these Teams groups have meetings every 2 weeks, and there is a programme of career-long professional learning up on each site. It's a pretty full and very varied programme, so plenty of opportunity there for CLPL in terms of RME. If you want to join any of those Teams groups, simply drop me an email with your Glow address and we can do that. And obviously around COP26 we'll be looking through a much more kind of focused lens back to environmental issues, which of course is a great passion of mine. Anyway, Lynn, you want to mention any of your Teams groups that you have available?
Yep, thanks, Joe. There's a Social Studies national team group, which is really for anyone, but there's a specific primary Social Studies team, which just started a few months ago. And we had the first piece of learning on that the other day to do with people of medieval Scotland, and coming up there's one on landscapes. So hope to see you there, and again just drop me an email if you'd like to join either of the teams. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Lynn. And Yvonne and Jane, I noticed earlier on, and apologies if this has been answered already, but there were some questions asking about access to the resources being developed by Falkirk Council beyond Falkirk Council. So as I say, apologies if you've addressed that one, but maybe just to make that clear for folks, is that possible?
Yeah, Yvonne stuck a wee message in the chat just saying if people want to drop us an email, then we'll happily provide the starter plans for people and other local authorities to start using.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I would add is that, as Mark said, we've got the LFS community group where all of the authorities share their resources as well. So we don't have them up there at the moment, but we can speak to Mark and Mary about that as well. That might make life a wee bit easier. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for that. Okay, any further questions?
I think we're a minute from the end.
We're a minute from the end. Okay. Anything else coming up? No. Okay. In that case, just remains to thank Yvonne and Jane. Certainly from my RME perspective, you know, I do think sometimes I do tend to get into that kind of tunnel vision around RME and think, how do we see it beyond the wider context of one curricular area? And I think as a group of practitioners, I think that, you know, interdisciplinary learning has always been there, but this provides us with a fantastic opportunity to be able to have those conversations and think about how we can actually link the curriculum up in a way that is meaningful for learners and helpful for learners to So thanks very much to Yvonne and Jane for your fantastic work on that. Lynn and I have constant conversations. Back in the real world, we used to sit across the desk from each other, so we'd often have conversations about the links between social studies and RME, and obviously in relation to COP26 and environmental issues, there's great opportunities there to explore things. So thank you very much, everyone. I see your email contacts will be available, and good luck in your work and leading towards COP26 and supporting learners to understand themselves and others, and make the world a better place, because that's why we're here after all, isn't it? So thank you very much for that, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the Scottish Learning Festival.